Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another Tech Visionary interviews. This time we are glad to have Rainer Stropek joining us. He is a Microsoft Regional Director and MVP, and he has really fantastic projects working with kids, which is the topic we are going to talk about today. Before that, hi Rainer, how are you doing?
Hi, Reza. I'm fine. How are you doing?
Great, great to hear from you. Would you mind introducing yourself a little bit?
Absolutely. First, let me say thank you for having me on your great interview series here. I'm calling you
Thank you.
from Austria. So, my hometown is Linz. It's in Austria, in Europe. So, for me, it's currently quite late in the evening. For my professional life, I build software for the cloud. I focus on building software solutions, software as a service solutions on Azure. We partly build these solutions in my own company for our own purposes. So we are a software as a service vendor ourselves, but we also help medium, small, and even larger enterprises to make the transition to move to the cloud, to switch from a licensed-based model to a more software as a service cloud-based business model. This is what I do for my business life. And as you mentioned, for my private life, my big hobby is programming with kids. And this is, I think, the core topic of this interview, and I'm really very much looking forward to it.
That's a really interesting things to talk about. In fact, like we have a local MVP here in Auckland, New Zealand, who does actually that as well. So let's start with like why it is important to teach, or for let's say young generation, why it is important to learn these from early stages.
Mhm. Yeah, I personally think that it's a very good idea that we give kids the possibility to learn the basic ideas of software and coding at a pretty early stage, because at this stage, let's say for instance, we in our programming club we start with kids with 7 or 8 years, something around that age. And in this age they are so curious, they want to learn. They wonder how their smartphone, how their smart TV, how a computer works. And it's really it's really awesome to watch them in a playful way exploring these technologies. It's not so much school. It's not I have to learn computer science. It's really very much a playful exploration of the possibility of technology. And this is essentially what we want to do. We want to open their minds, because for many kids, they do not grow up in an environment where maybe their parents are programmers, or they have already grown up sisters or brothers who are in the programming industry. Many of them don't get in touch with coding at all. And this is what we want to do. We want to open a perspective at a rather early age so that kids get an idea how fascinating and how fulfilling coding is, and what a creative work software development can be. And we personally we believe that this should be done at a pretty early stage, because at that early stage, maybe the kids, yeah, maybe they like it, and maybe they incorporate learning into their school, their education, and they make some interesting decisions when it comes to higher schools or universities, for instance.
That's really great. When you talk about like kids, what are like normal range of kids that you having in your courses classes?
Yeah, as mentioned in my case, we are running a Coder Dojo. Coder Dojo is a worldwide movement of volunteer-led programming clubs for kids, and Coder Dojos are typically for kids between 7 and 17. In our Coder
Right.
Dojo, we focus mainly on 8 to 17, because our prerequisite is that the kids have to be able to read. That's the only prerequisites that kids have to fulfill in order to participate in our club. We have some, let's say, programming games which kids can do who cannot read already, but it's not that fascinating. So typically we say the kids should be able to read. So starting with 8 and going up to 17.
Right, that's great. And one factor you mentioned also is to bring like game experience into that so that they don't really feel this is like a work or homework all the time. It has a little bit fun part in it as well, right? How do you handle that part?
Yeah, absolutely. Programming games is at the core of what we do. So whenever we get young kids, let's say 8, 9, 10, something like this, we start mainly with a programming platform which is pretty well known. It's called Scratch. It's from the MIT. It's a block programming language, so kids don't need to type in complex commands or something like this. You can control Scratch with your mouse or your finger, depending on whether you have a touch monitor or not. You can program on a laptop, you can program on your desktop computer, but you can also program on your iPad or whatever tablet you have available, even on a Raspberry Pi. So the entry the entry hurdle is really low. It's really easy to get started with Scratch. And the most important thing you can do with Scratch is invent your own games. For instance, we have a bunch of exercises which we prepared. I mean the mentoring team of Coder Dojo, and these exercises. We give them to kids when they come to us for the first time, and these exercises work through them together with mentors, and these exercises lead them from having absolutely no idea what coding is to their first own coded computer game within, I would say, an hour or 1.5 hours. So it's very important to enable them to have a quick success, so it becomes a rewarding task. Programming has to deliver a quick reward for children at that age, and this is what we do with the gaming stuff. Because once they are done with coding, they can play their own game. Playing games is perfectly fine in the Coder Dojo, but they have to code the game themselves before they can start playing with their kids and their peers.
That's really cool, really impressive to have like something as an outcome in like an hour or two, which is quite fantastic. So
Mhm.
you mentioned about like this Kodo Dojo. Is it something that is limited to a specific country, region, or it's like a global organization? How does it work?
Mm. Coder Dojo is a worldwide movement. It started in Ireland, if I can remember correctly, and nowadays it's spread all over the globe. It's in Europe, it's in North America, it is even in Africa, South America. If you Google for Coder Dojo, you will find a big world map, and you can check whether you have a Coder Dojo in your own area. I think currently Coder Dojos are present in around 100 countries, something like this. So it's really a worldwide movement. We started the first regular Coder Dojo here in Austria. 5 years ago. Yeah, we started pretty much 5 years ago. And always since then, we meet with kids. Even now at Corona time, we do it online, of course, approximately every 2 weeks. Currently, we do it weekly, but typically we do bi-weekly meetings, and we have approximately 1,500 to 2,000 visits per year, something like this, with 30 to 40 events around that number, pretty much. Yeah.
That's fantastic. How adults are involved in this process? Are they mainly involved as a mentor, or there's any other ways to help as well?
Yeah, the most important thing is, of course, mentoring. Coder dojos and programming clubs, they are built by mentors. They are driven by mentors. Mentors are the most important adults for running the Coder dojo. Our mentors are typically professional coders, so people who are passionate about coding and also passionate about teaching how to code. They love to work with kids, and they are the most important group of people working with us together in the Coder Dojo. But there we have additional supporters too. We have adults who, for instance, care a little bit about the infrastructure, because of course we have dozens of laptops which have to be prepared. We have our own wireless LAN which is transportable and things like that. So there are a few adults who also deal with the organizational stuff. But The main and most important group is the group of mentors.
That's great. So that discussion about like laptops and infrastructure brings another point as well. How, let's say, businesses might be able to help this
Mhm,
movement or this, let's
mhm.
say, whole thing through like a sponsorship,
Yep,
like probably with the
yep.
venues, with laptop or something like that. Do you get any of those?
Yes, we do. But as far as I have heard from people all over the globe, it really very much differs from country to country. We here in Europe, especially also here in Austria, we have a very strong culture for volunteer led clubs. And also, the government spends a lot of money for non-profit organizations like sports clubs and also programming clubs like us. So, for instance, we have to pay only a very, very small amount of money for getting all the rooms available nearly for free. And things like that are provided by the local government. So we don't need a lot of budget in that area. What we need is laptops because we want to be as open and as inclusive as possible. And because of that, we need to make everything for free. So kids don't pay anything, their parents don't pay anything, and we want to have laptops available which we can give to kids also for free. And we are lucky because in that area we have a lot of companies who jump in and give us their old laptops, which are in many cases pretty good, still pretty good, but which are not enough for power professionals, coders, but they are perfectly fine for kids who learn how to code. And in that area, we get donations. But above that, we don't need very much money because our mentors, they spend their time for free with Coder. The rooms, we get it for free. And with that, it's not much money behind these programming clubs.
That's really good to know and good to hear all of these different supports that you get, especially from government and
Mhm.
others. One other thing is like how parents can help this whole thing, like the education of the kids with
Mhm.
the technology.
Mhm.
What do you see their
Well,
role?
if we would have had this call, let's say 4 or 5 months before, my answer would probably be pretty much different. Before Corona, I would say the most important part for parents is bring your kids. So give them the possibility to come to a programming club because they will meet their friends there. They will meet like-minded kids. They will get the support from our mentoring team, and make sure that you keep the minds of the children as open as possible. Unfortunately, we often meet people who, for instance, take their boys, bring them to the computer club, and they tell us that they also have a girl at home, but they didn't take the girl with them because that's nothing for girls. This is something which parents shouldn't do nowadays. Well, I told you that my answer would have had been different, but now it is different because in Corona times, children, especially small children, need support when it comes to web conferences. So much is going on online. We do all our Coder Dojos in an online manner. So they need support in setting up the laptop, helping the kids to connect to the Coder Dojo, help them overcome Wi-Fi and internet problems, and so on. They are just starting to work with computers. And I know for many parents, they have multiple kids, they have a stressful job, especially nowadays. And it's again something they have to deal with their laptops and their internet. So it is kind of stressful. But this is one thing that parents can do. They can enable kids to at least join online activities in that direction, um, as long as we can't do personal meetings. Yeah, because
Yeah,
of
that is really important, and I agree with you that like the whole Corona things like changed the way that everything moves towards digital and things like that, uh, which is kind of like a good side effect, let's say, if there is any. Do you have like I'm sure there are like plenty, but do you have something like in the back of your mind as a real world scenario of like these kids to become, let's say, professionals in their let's say future life or something like
Mhm.
that? Not those that you are teaching right now, but anything like you have ever heard of or something like that.
Yeah, we definitely hear regularly that especially the teenagers who decide in our country, in Austria, these teenagers typically decide at an age of 14, 13, 14, whether they want to go into a specialized high school or college where they do computer science. So at that age, they have for the first time the opportunity to specialize. And we have a lot of kids who learned in Coder Dojo at a younger age what coding is, and then they decide at 14, something like this, to go in a specialized higher school for computer science. We also have some children and especially teenagers who have been with us when they were 15, 16, something like this. And at the age of 17, 18, they have to decide whether they want to go to university. And if they do, whether they want to study computer science or a similar study. And yeah, of course, we have a lot of examples like that. But I would like um, to point out that it is not our primary goal, and it shouldn't be the primary goal of computer clubs to to raise the next elite of coders. That's not what we do, because if you do that, you have a very narrow focus, and you need only those kids who are really deep into technology. They typically have a background of parents who also are technology minded. They typically come from a social economic background where they have a lot of opportunities. What we want to do, we want to open perspectives for all children, not just children who are already on their track to become some tech visionaries, let's put it this way. We want to open perspective for kids who would not get in touch with technology without a programming club. We want to be inclusive and we want to be diverse. So kids who cannot afford their own computer, kids who maybe don't have the full support of their parents, not because the parents don't want to give them the support, but maybe both parents have to work, or they come from a social economic background where it's really, really hard. Maybe they are struggling a little bit, and we want to be inclusive. We want to offer something for those people, for those children too. It's absolutely not necessary that they become professional coders. I always compare it to school, learning basic about math and reading. Not everybody who learns reading and writing will become a professional author. It's not necessary, but it gives you a kind of skill set. It gives you some basic skills that all these children will need. And maybe some of them will become professional coders, but definitely not all of them, and that's perfectly fine.
That's a really great analogy, and I like the way that you are looking at this. One last thing about this, like, what do you see as a limitation of implementing such thing like this? Like, for example, one of the things that I'm thinking right now is like in developed countries, it might be much easier because we might get the help of government or some businesses to support. But in a lot of like countries that are not in that stage yet, what do you think would be impactful to make this experience better for those countries and kids in those countries?
Mm. I cannot imagine. I really cannot imagine how the situation is maybe in rural India or South Africa or generally Africa or in really poor countries. I I guess it might be very, very difficult. What I can talk about is how the situation is in a developed country like Austria. We are a pretty rich country. We are a really safe country, and we are a country with a tight social network, which is also provided by the government. But the current corona crisis shows us that we have a large percentage of kids which cannot be reached by the education system if we don't have schools open. And this is something that is currently happening. We had a lockdown of schools for many months. Currently, we have summer holidays, but we don't know what's going on after summer holidays in autumn, in winter, if the schools will shut down again. And what we have seen at the Coder Dojo, but also what was a general development here in Austria, is that the education system and clubs like us, we lost contact to a certain group of children. It's exactly those children who come from a less fortunate social economic background, who maybe have a difficult situation because they are not that wealthy. A lot of children in a single family where maybe both parents have to work, maybe they have a second or third job to earn enough money. And those children, we are losing contact to those children. And this is a really a big problem generally for education here in Austria. And it is also a big problem for us because those children who are fascinated from coding and who have a very stable family, they still come to us. It's perfectly fine. But we have definitely lost a certain group of children, and that's a pity. We are thinking about how we can get in touch again with them, and therefore we are also hoping that we can start with in-person meetings as soon as possible. One thing that we did, for instance, to overcome this problem is we made contact to schools, and we offered to lend our laptops that we have for doing Coder Dojos on a continuous basis to children who cannot afford their own devices for remote learning from home and things like that. But again, unfortunately, it was very hard to reach those children because it is not even easy to get in touch with them and ask them whether they need the hardware because the schools also have lost contact with some children, and that's definitely something that we have to overcome, and hopefully it will become better again once Corona is over.
Yeah, thank you for your insight and experience on this. That was a great discussion. Do you have anything else to mention on this topic that I haven't asked?
No, I think you asked great questions, and well, the only thing that I would like to say in on this matter is start your own programming club or help in a programming club. Programming clubs, they need the help of volunteers. So if you are a professional software developer and you have a heart for kids, and I know many developers have a big heart for kids, help out a few hours per month. It makes a huge difference for some people. Maybe you can influence a child who makes a fundamental decision for her or his future in deciding which career path, with which school they want to take. And that's a great feeling. So I would like to try to motivate everybody to engage in those clubs because sometimes we tend to tell or say that we have a problem with young coders coming up and filling in the necessary programming jobs that we have open in companies. But with that, we can't really do something against it. So try it. I'm pretty sure it will be very rewarding.
That's a great advice. Awesome, thank you. How our audience can contact you if they have any questions or anything like that?
Yeah, the easiest thing is via Twitter. So if you have questions, just send me a direct message. If you would like to keep in touch, I Twitter typically in English, so you can follow me, for instance, and I typically tweet about events that we do, about organizations that we support and things like that. So Twitter is the easiest way to do that. I also have a LinkedIn profile. You can send me a connection invite for LinkedIn, and I'm happy to get into a discussion or maybe help somebody who is watching this video and who wants to start with a programming club. Don't hesitate, just contact me.
Awesome. Thank you. That's fantastic. And thank you for all your time for this interview and all your time that you spend with these kids to help the whole awareness and the skill set of the community, especially in younger generation.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much, Reza.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone, also for watching. Until next time, see you later.